You are listening to The Fortress. Welcome to my new show, The Fortress. Now, we're going to be doing a lot of things on this little broadcast, podcast, videocast, blogcast, whatever you want to call it. I'm here to reveal a little bit of light in the darkness. As I've said in my writings, in my blog posts, even in my novels, we are surrounded by darkness everywhere we go. And that's because we live in a fallen world due to the choices of mankind. What I wanted to start with, I guess my monologue that will kind of help bring the show to life, is revealing light in the darkness through a vision. This vision kind of describes how I first started picturing a theme to work with in the first place. As far as reaching others for Christ, I wanted to reach out into the darkness and be a sign of hope. I wanted to be a vessel that God could use. And so I'm going to read you this little writing that I had. I was basically writing down the actual vision I had. Now, there's a lot of imagery here. And if you concentrate and listen, I want you to listen good. You can really see where I can take this as a ministry. Because if we can reach people at their lowest points and they can see what I felt as I was having this vision, perhaps we can shine a little bit of hope in somebody's life. So here it goes. There I was, standing at the edge of the dark woods and glancing up at the gigantic, almost foreboding fortress on a small mountaintop. I looked at how vast it appeared from my lowly point of view, but I knew I had to stay my course and move on. The fortress, as my destination, was still better than the alternative. Nothing but darkness in my wake. As a matter of fact, darkness was all around, and it seemed like it had been there for the longest time. No matter where I looked, I saw dark, mysterious shapes, potential trouble that could exist in any form. I had fought my way past monsters, escaped marauders, and outran the most wicked, but I knew I couldn't continue at this pace. I needed somewhere I could find some solace. So when I came out of the thorns and thickets and the dank, moist cover of the hideous and rotting tree branches, despite the immense path and course that lay before me going up to that fortress, I still saw light. That light was the only thing I can imagine that could beckon me forward at the time. From a journey fraught with peril, light had to be better than the darkness. I used my sword given me for my Lord to cut down the rest of the underbrush that hindered me. The Lord's armor and shield had protected me from possible severe injury along the way. And my helmet was perhaps the only thing that kept me alive from the previous creatures of the night that had tried to set upon me earlier in my quest. I trudged along, carrying the weight and burden of both heavy limbs and heavy armor. My pace had slowed even though I knew I was bound to be overtaken by the evil that lurked. Yet I could still see the light. After some struggling and heavy breathing, I made it to the foot of the short path up to the drawbridge of the great fortress. Even though the bridge began to lower, I swear I could feel the darkness closing in. By the time the bridge was all the way down, I had reached the point to cross, but I fell on my knees. Whatever had been chasing me, I just knew was ready to pounce. But then I looked towards the source of that light, that bright light that I had seen in the distance. There before me was my Lord. He beckoned me to come forward, and I couldn't help but want to look over my shoulder to check on the darkness that had been so ready to overtake me. But the Lord said, "Come," and drove the evil away. The Lord said again, "Come," And so it was his voice that finally moved me. His voice to which I finally chose to listen. His voice that called me home. And once I entered his home, in which he had always told me I was welcome, I at last could find peace. Now, what if I can reach people out there who are struggling in dark times? What if they can just hear me tell a story or see a guest that I have on my show that has faced darkness and come out of it on the other side because they saw a light and they went to it? That's all I really want to do with these broadcasts, these videos, these interviews I end up having. And of course, if I can point people to the light through my writing, through my blog posts, through my novels that I write, I want to do that. The Lord told us to go and make disciples of all nations. But he didn't say that we couldn't do that by reaching out and helping others. He didn't say we couldn't do it by reaching out and helping others. So that's what I want to do. So I hope you enjoyed that. If you actually pay attention to the video montage, in my video montage, there's one picture in particular of this castle, this fortress up on top of a hill in the night. But the fortress itself is glowing. There's a light within that fortress. I pray every day, I pray that God can be a light inside me and I can shine it out to the rest of the world, even if I reach just one person at a time. So that's the end of my first monologue. Hope it was okay. What we're going to do now is something unique and interesting. I'm going to actually go to a few words from our friends. Hey, Bob. Bob, you heard about this new author down there in South Carolina? South Kakalaki, as we like to call it. You heard about him writing them novels? Them novels about assassins and killers and such. It somehow he claims to spout off the word of God or something. You heard about this guy? Well, golly, Bob, I think so. I think actually one of my other friends was reading his work the other day, and he said it was right good stuff. Right good stuff is what he said. Well, he said it teaches good lessons, good moral values, and all that and such. Leroy, so let me get this straight. You're saying this guy writes about people shooting and doing mean things and taking out radical Islam and this, radical Islam that, and then we got evil and some kind of government conspiracy, and he still talks about Jesus? Well, yeah, Bob, that's what I'm hearing. I went out and bought his first book. His first book's called Misguided. He ain't endorsing the killing. He ain't endorsing the killing at all, Bob. He is just trying to tell a good, exciting story, kind of like them movies. But he puts a good lesson in it. A lesson we could all learn from. Well, you know what? I reckon I'm going to check this guy out. You know what? I saw his address the other day. It's www.jason-e-fort.com. So you guys watching this video, hey, look at that, I'm on camera. You guys watching this video, y'all check him out now, y'all. Y'all want to? Alright. Well, y'all have a good one now. Welcome back. You just heard from Bob Leroy and Leroy Bob, two personal friends of mine that happen to endorse my writing. Now, little did you know, you actually already received a little introduction to who I am. Yes, the show is called The Fortress. That is also one of my many nicknames. I am the Fortress, aka Fort, aka Lou, aka Hulk. A lot of different nicknames. I'll just go by Fortress or Jason. Jason's a good one since that's the name I was born with and given by my lovely parents. Anyway, a little bit about me. My name is Jason E. Fort. I am a Christian author. I write Christian fiction, and again, it's to reveal light in the darkness. I happen to also be a husband, a father. I'm a former PE teacher. I've been everything from a PE teacher to personal trainer, football coach, basketball coach, baseball coach. Somewhere along the way, I was also a bouncer, and now I just happen to work as a police officer during the day. So, police officer is my day job, but my passion is writing. It's kind of discovered late in life, but I've always had a creative side to me. So I thought I'd take a couple minutes just to introduce you to who I am as a person, not just the Fortress, but what I'm all about. I also wanted to take this small segment, to thank a few people for bringing this little show about. Interesting story of why this show even started, and that is because it's a God thing. I was actually just surfing the internet, not the internet, I was surfing the TV channels, and I was just breezing through the religious channels, and I stopped on the God network, or the God channel, and there was this attractive young lady talking about her book. She was talking about basically a thriller. It's called Soul Deceiver. Her name was Lynn Liaz. Now, I was interested because she was obviously a Christian author. She was talking about her book. She had a platform she was reaching out to, and I was like, I wonder how she got there. And so I looked her up. I looked her up on YouTube, and on her YouTube channel, she had a couple of different things listed on her channel, and I happened to notice a radio station, and it was based out of Colorado. Now, I live in South Carolina, so you guys out at KDOV or KDOV, you guys are listening to me from South Carolina, easily South Carolina. So anyway, I reached out to this guy. I sent him an email. Keith Harden is his name. You guys at KDOV, obviously you know him because he runs everything over there. And I sent him an email, told him how I came upon his name and stuff like that. We got to talking, and he actually gave me an opportunity. He said, well, would you like a slot on my show? Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself, that kind of thing. And so I sent him some stuff. I sent him some stuff about my books. I think I sent him a link to my website, that kind of thing. And so that's what brought me on this little show. That's what brought this show about. I'm going to have a 30-minute slot on KDOV every week. So I said, well, if I'm going to be doing a radio show, an audio segment, I might as well make a video too. So you've already heard me talk about videos and blog posts and all that stuff that you see. Well, now I get to be heard. And I actually do use my voice a good bit on the job. I train people for a living. And again, I'm a police officer. I still carry out normal police duties as well. And again, we live in a dark world, so it just kind of all goes together. Everything, I strongly believe that everything happens for a reason, and something made me go to Mr. Harden through an email to bring all of this about. So thank you, KDOV. Thank you for my family bearing with me through this and listening to me talk to myself on a radio station and to a video camera and all that fun stuff. So there's just a few minutes about me, who I am. What you can expect more in this show will be a lot of different monologues, readings, interviews with guests, and occasionally I might even, I don't know, name drop, but not really, not intentionally. When I say name drop, I'm talking about name drop fictional characters in my books, or people I make up for my little endorsements. And you already met Bob Leroy and Leroy Bob. So now we're going to take a little break. We'll go to a message from another friend of mine. And after you meet Vladimir, we'll come back and we'll have a little interview with a police officer. Oh, hello, comrades. I didn't know you were there. My name is Vladimir. You happened to catch me while I was sharpening my knives. Pay no attention. It's not important. But comrades, I am here as a special guest to you. Today I want to tell you I have never read such stories. Stories that seem impossible. But when you look right into them, if you dive really deep into these stories, you can read things about the Russian mafia, you can read things about Putin, you can read all sorts of things, comrades. You can read about Jesus. Now I know what you are thinking. You are thinking, what does this Russian know about Jesus? Well, I know what Jason Fort tells me. I read his writing, I read his blog posts. Apparently, he has quite a following over in Russia, over in the mother country. Yes, Mother Russia. But anyway, what I wanted to tell you is if you look him up at www.jason-e-fort.com, you will find out everything you need to know about his writing, his blogs, his events, and what he believes about Jesus. And he tells it, of course, you know. He backs up everything he says according to what he has learned from the Bible, the church where he grew up. They emphasize the importance of the good book. And me, well, yes. Okay, so I mess with knives and such. That's not important. What is important is you look up my friend Jason. You look him up. You will not be disappointed. And that is all you will hear from me today. Enough of that. I will get back to sharpening knives. You have a good day, comrades. Welcome back. You just heard from Vladimir the Russian, good friend of mine. He endorses my show. He's very proud to be a fan of the Fortress books. As I told you, when we came back, we would welcome someone else to the show. My very first guest, this is Officer Devin Dixon. He actually works with me in the health system where we are police officers. But I wanted you to not just hear from me, but hear another police officer's hear from his experience, hear his answers to some questions that really addresses the issue of the darkness in our world. Devin is also a Christian, and so he uses his faith to deal with a lot of stuff. He's seen stuff that I have not. He's been in law enforcement a lot longer than me, but I'm going to let him kind of pick up from there. So Devin, first of all, welcome to my home.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. I do want to start out by just letting the audience know, how long have you been in law enforcement?
About 23 years.
23 years. That's my favorite number. That was Michael Jordan's number.
Feels like a lifetime.
All right, well, let me ask you this. What made you want to be a police officer?
Well, truly, when I was getting ready to graduate high school, I was going to go into marketing and advertising. And I had an uncle who was a Michigan State trooper, and he came over one day before he had to go for some training and said, hey, get in the car, let's go for a ride. And we drove around, pulled a couple cars over, and I said, yeah, this is kind of neat. And that was it. Went into law enforcement, college, and haven't looked back since.
Awesome. Awesome. What kind of department would you say our department is now? What kind of police department would you describe it as?
Well, I would probably describe it as a community policing aspect of law enforcement. Our hospital, although it's big, we basically work on the campuses themselves. We're not really out on the road and knocking on doors and such. So it's a little bit more closed community that we work for.
But before you got to our department, you had a lot of experience on the road, didn't you?
I did, in just about every agency type you could imagine.
Okay.
I've worked for a village police department that was a mile square. I've worked for a sheriff department that was, 400 miles, and then now the hospital system, which is again basically campuses. So you can almost put that down to acres instead of miles.
Gotcha. Well, let me ask you this. What do you think the average person's mindset is as it relates to evil?
Just because of over the years, and not just with people I've dealt with. I mean, even some family members, they all, and you've heard the cliche, they live in a bubble, but it's truly seen when you deal with people that if it doesn't affect them directly, they don't know what's going on in normal everyday society.
My wife can tell you that I've probably become a little jaded just over the 6 years that I've been in law enforcement, and I've been at our department most of the time. I was only on the road a brief stint out in Greenville County. Well, do you believe there are people out there who simply have evil intentions?
I do, and that's kind of two-part. I believe there's some that have evil intentions because they're missing a couple things. They may be missing something psychologically that most people have. When you talk about like a sociopath or somebody like that, where they don't have feelings towards anyone else or pain or another person's pain, they don't feel apathy. Or it's also evil can be somewhat learned. If you grow up in a non-Christian household where God is not the center, you don't learn how to treat your fellow man. So when you do wrong to fellow man, it's no big deal.
Gotcha. So they just see it as just an everyday thing to them, and it's not.
I almost like the price of just doing business, and again, I think that comes from just not having a Christ-centered home to grow up in, because you're not learning any morals or values at home.
Well, let me ask you this. We deal with a lot of those evil people, but those I guess those critics out there who seem to know so much, yet they pretend or ignore that the evil's not there. Why do you think they seem to know so much and how they would handle a situation, the same kind of situations that either make us look bad on TV or where officers make mistakes, that kind of thing? They second guess us. Why do you think that is?
I think it's easy to play Monday morning quarterback, but everything that we do, we basically learn on the streets, and we've got to make these decisions that are split-second decisions. We don't have the time to look at it, analyze it, figure out what's going to be the outcome down the road, who it's going to affect. I mean, we've got literally seconds to make a decision, and again, it's just easy for everybody else to sit back after everything's said and done and pick it apart. But it's the hardest job there really is, because of the fact that we have to make those types of decisions.
So I'm gonna change gears on you a little bit. I know that you haven't quite read my novels in person yet, but that's because we work out together and I kind of tell you spoilers anyway. But in my third novel, I basically have a scenario where it's almost like there is an intentional, conspiracy that causes division between law enforcement and the rest of the people. And it's almost like it's intentional, some driving force. So how do you feel about that?
Well, it seems like it's following the path that probably the last 8 years have followed. And that being said, I feel like the current administration has really separated and probably made us go back 50 years in time when it comes to the support of law enforcement over just the regular citizens. And you know, that being said, we need people in there that are going to support law enforcement. Law enforcement makes mistakes too, but overall, in general, you can't have an administration jumping in there and making statements about something that happened before there's even been an investigation. So that division has really been placed throughout our country over the last probably 8 years, I think.
Now, could you see that, I don't know, leading to higher crime rates, riots, that kind of thing? Something similar to what we have seen over the last.
I can tell you that if there's not a change, you're going to see a decrease or a higher decrease in the number of people that want to be police officers, because who wants to go into a field where, number one, you have no backing, and number two, you're almost walking around with a target on your back, because in this day and age, say the last couple of weeks, it's daily that a police officer is being shot or killed, and it didn't used to be like that as often. Now, obviously, there's always been a percentage of off in the line of duty deaths, but it seems a lot more prevalent, and you see a lot more ambush style and attacks on the police.
Gotcha. Well, I tell you what, you mentioned jobs, less people going into the field of law enforcement, but let me ask you, what would you tell Joe Citizen about our jobs as police officers and the justice system in general?
The first part, I would probably tell them it's really going to be the toughest job you've ever done. You can't leave things at work like a lot of people can. Things you're going to see in your career, it's just not that easy to just leave them at work. You're going to see death, you're going to see injury, you may have to be involved in some type of death. So, when it comes to that, they really need to understand that it's going to take a strong mind to be able to make it in a complete career in law enforcement. When it comes to, I don't know, the second half of that, it's probably more about, it's the best system we got. It's not perfect, but you're talking about trying to revamp a huge criminal justice system. And I know there's a lot of people out there that seem to have all their ideas about it, but I don't know how you could do a complete overhaul of it. And again, with the administration we have currently, I see it going backwards more than I see it going forward at this point.
Gotcha. Well, the election results were, I guess you could say, they were kind of in our favor.
They were.
At least as far as how President-elect Trump treats law enforcement officers. I think you can agree with me on that one.
I do.
But let me ask you this: going back to the subject of evil, can you tell me or think of a specific incident where you encountered an individual and he just seemed to have absolutely no regard to human life or people's safety at all? What was the incident?
I've actually seen several of those over my career, and it's easiest to if you just deal with, say, someone who's committed murder. And I remember, and it wasn't too long ago, we actually had one that was in the hospital, and as a patient, right after he'd committed the murder, I think he ended up in a car wreck after a police chase, and ended up coming to our hospital before he was, and ended up going to jail. So just in that sense, and again, I've seen it multiple times, and it's almost that same look and that same attitude that you can see in them. When you look at them, you're looking into their eyes. There's nobody home. I mean, they just, if you ever saw just black eyes, that's what you feel like you're looking into, because they really don't appear like they have any soul, and they don't have any remorse for what they did. I mean, and again, I keep going back to it, but if thou shalt not kill is the first big commandment, and if you don't have anything from your past growing up or a solid base to start with in Christianity, you're going to be a lost soul.
Well, let me now this is probably the last question I'm going to ask you, but when you encountered that individual or others like him in the hospital or out on the road in Michigan, how did you apply your faith to that situation?
I tell you what, with every situation, I tried to treat people fairly. It didn't matter if they were a criminal, what they had done wrong. I'm not here to judge. I've got a job to do, and I think you still treat almost all of them. And again, I would dare say a murderer might be treated a little bit different as far as, I'm not going to strike up just a general conversation with them, but they're still human beings, and we're all human. We all make mistakes, but I really did see a difference when I still tried to treat them like a human being and talked with them. And now I didn't get into reciting Bible verses or anything to them, because even that nowadays can be a touchy subject. But
that's true.
But just generally treating them like a human being goes a long way. And when I'm done with them, I take them into the jail. Sometimes they thank me. They say, "Hey, thanks for treating me like a person," because not everybody has done that over their lifetime.
I always thought it was funny, after you tase a guy, fight him to the ground, you take him to the jail, and he apologizes for the way he acted, and all of a sudden,
absolutely,
you have a rapport with them because you de-escalate after you control their violence and their bad intentions.
And talking with them goes a long way. I mean, even after the incident's done, as long as they weren't physically trying to injure me, I'm still going to try to treat them like a human being.
Gotcha. Well, Devin, I think that wraps up about most of my questions I intended to ask you. First of all, I want to thank you again. You're the first guy on the show, The Fortress. So, kudos for Devin there. He signed his life away and everything. So I want to thank him for coming. And at the same time, we're going to have a few closing words after this. So prepare for a message from one of our friends, and we'll be right back.
Hey, how you doing? Yo, my name's Vinny. Yeah, that guy Jason and I, we go way back. And let me tell you something about Jason. Jason turned my life around. You know what he did? He introduced me to some books. Now, me not being the typical type of guy that reads books, he kind of turned me on to some, I guess they're kind of like thrillers. But, they're not just thrillers. They talk about Jesus and they talk about God. Hey, forget about it. You're talking about that kind of stuff, you're talking about turning lives around. So what you need to do, hey, you just go to his website, www.jason-e-fort.com. Capiche? Yeah, go check him out. You'll see what I'm talking about. Hey, ciao.
Welcome back, everybody. Well, that concludes our first edition of The Fortress. Nothing else left for you today on this show, but I did want to tell you before we leave about what will be back next week. I'm going to have a new guest. His name is Jeremy Goldsmith. Jeremy is a co-author of a book called Leadership in Black and White. I will probably have his other author, the co-author of that book, Rick Hardy, sometime down the road, because they have very different career paths they have taken. However, Jeremy and I used to work together. He worked in security as I was a police officer. So Jeremy will be a guest, and he and I will both tackle the subject of racial tension in this country. So I hope you'll be prepared for that. In the meantime, again, a big shout out and thank you to KDOV for letting this be on the radio. Thank you, Mr. Hardin, Mr. Keith. I appreciate it. I hope this cuts the mustard, and until next time.